Hi everybody, welcome to Live Blogger. In this video, I'll show you how to create this menu animation using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. So let's get started. Alright, so here I have created this folder called menu animation and I just opened it with VS Code. Now let's create the necessary files. So let's create a new file and let's name it index.html. Let's create another file, let's name it style.css. And let's create one more file and let's call it main.js. Let's start with the index.html file. Now in VS Code you can just press exclamation and press tab and you'll have this basic HTML5 code. Right, let's link our CSS file over here. And here in the body I'll just link the JavaScript file. Right, now let's start with the markup of our design. So the first thing we will do is we'll create a container division. Well, let's create a nav element and let's give it a class of custom nav. And in this we will create these different menu items. So let's create a container division for this, and I'll just create a division with the class of menu text. And in this we need to have the text. Now here we can see that when we hover over this text, we have this text moving up and we have another text coming up from the bottom. So we need to have two text over here. So for the first one, let's add a division with the class of text container. And for the second one, let's create a division and let's give it a class of text container copy. I'll just change this div into an anchor tag so that it can be a link. And here we will add an href, and here you can add the link of this page. So for now, I'll just type hash. Alright, now the next thing we need to do is we need to write this text, home, about, and downloads. So we can just add the text over here. So if I just type home, and I just open this in the browser. So I have this extension called live server installed in VS Code. So once you have this installed, you can just right click in the HTML file and click on open with live server. And here we can see that our design is displayed in the browser. And here we have home displayed. But if you take a look at this animation, we can see that each of the characters or each of the letters inside the word are animated differently. So we need to separate all of these characters inside this word. Now there are libraries that can split your words into individual characters. But since we don't have a lot of text, we can just do it on our own. So instead of writing home like this, I'll just create span for each of the characters. So let's tap H and let's duplicate this span. Let's duplicate it 3 more times. And for the second one, we need to type O. And for the third one, we need to type M. And for the fourth one, we need to type E. So this is home, but we are separating each of the characters. So now if you go back, here we can see that we have home displayed, but each of these characters are separate. Now we can animate them separately. Now we need to have two text because we need to have the animation of the other text coming up from the bottom. So I'll just go ahead and copy these spans and let's paste them over here inside text container copy. And now let's go ahead and copy this anchor tag and let's paste it 2 more times. And for the second one, we need to type about. So here instead of home, let's type A, and here we need to type B, O, U, and we need to duplicate this 1 more time, and here we need to type T. And let's copy this spans from here, and let's paste them over here inside text container copy. And let's do the same for the third one, which is downloads. So I'll just add it quickly, DOW, N, and here let's type L, O, A, D, and S. And let's go ahead and copy these spans and let's paste them over here inside text container copy. And now if you go back, here we can see that we have home, about, and downloads. And with that, we have completed writing the HTML. Now let's go ahead and style this using CSS. So we have already linked our CSS file over here. So let's go to the style.css file. And the first thing we will do is we will style the container, which is this nav with the class of custom nav. So let's tap nav, custom nav. And let's go ahead and set a background color, and let's set the color to 023047, and we need to bring all this text one next to the other. So let's type display of flex. Right now let's add some margin. So let's type margin and let's set it to 32 pixels. And let's set the width of this element to 360 pixels. And let's add a box shadow and let's set the values to 0, 3 pixels, 50 pixels, negative 8 pixels RGBA, 0, 0, 0 and 0.3. And let's also add a padding of 8 pixels top and bottom and 24 pixels left and right. Right now let's style this menu text. So this is the anchor tag. In that we have these two text containers. So let's type menu text, and first of all let's set the color of the text to white. Now if we go back to the original design, here we can see that when we hover over this, when we move the text up, we can see that the text disappears, and for that we will have a specific height for this menu text. So here I'll just type height, and let's set the height to 30 pixels. And we will just hide everything outside this division. So let's tap overflow and let's set it to hidden. Right now let's go ahead and style this text container and this text container copy. So here let's type menu text, text container, and menu text, text container copy. And let's go ahead and set the font family to Roboto and sans serif. And let's remove the underlines. So let's tap text decoration and let's set it to none. And now let's go ahead and set the font size to 20 pixels. And let's set the font weight to bold. Now we can see we have some gap between these characters. So let's set the display to flex. And now we can see we don't have any gap. Alright, now let's go ahead and set the position of this text container and text container copy to absolute. And we will set it relative to this menu text. So here we need to type position relative, and here we need to type position absolute. And now we can see that nothing is being displayed. So here we also need to add a width. So let's set the width to 100%. And now we can see that the text is being displayed. Right now let's go ahead and bring this to the center. So let's tap top of 50%. And now it starts from the 50% mark. So here we also need to type transform, translate Y, negative 50%. And now it is exactly in the center. Right now when we hover over this text, we need to move them up. So here we can see that we have all these spans inside the text container. So let's move all of them up. So here let's type menu text, colon hover, and let's tap text container, span. And here let's tap transform and translate Y. And let's set the value to negative 30 pixels. And we'll also rotate it a little bit. So let's tap rotate X. And let's set the angle to 180 degrees. And we'll also set the opacity to 0. And let's also add a smooth transition to this. So here I'll just type menu text, text container, span. And here let's tap transition, all. And let's set the duration to 700 milliseconds. And let's type ease. And we can see that the text moves up. Now the other text that we added, which is the text container copy, is still here. So by default we need to bring it to the bottom, and when we hover over this we need to bring it to the top. So here let's go ahead and target the text container copy. So let's go ahead and type menu text, text container copy, and here let's type transform, translate Y, and let's try 20 pixels, and let's set the color of the text to yellow. And now let's add the hover effect. So let's tap menu text, colon hover, and text container copy, span, and here I'll just copy this line of code and let's paste it over here. Now here, instead of rotate X 180 degrees, let's set it to 0. And by default, we need to set it to rotate 180 degrees. So let's go ahead and type menu text, text container copy, span, and let's paste the line of code. And here let's type translate Y to 0 and rotate X, and let's set it to negative 180 degrees. And by default, we will set the opacity to 0 for the second text. And here we need to set the opacity back to 1. So let's tap opacity 1. And let's also add a transition for this. So I'll just copy this and let's paste it over here. Right now, let's go ahead and test it out. So let's hover over this and we can see that the animation is working alright. We have the first text going up and the second text coming up from the bottom. I think the position of both the text are not exactly correct. So here, I'll just change this a little bit. Here, I'll just let's try 19 pixels. And now I think the position is correct. So all the text animation are working. Right now, the last thing we need to do is we need to animate each of the characters separately. Now for that, we can add transition delay to each of the spans. So we need to add different transition delays to all of them. So for the first one, we need to add 0. For the second one, we will add, let's say, 100 milliseconds. And for the third one, let's say we will have 200 milliseconds and so on. But it would be difficult to do that because we have a lot of spans and we also have different number of spans in different text containers. So let's automate this task using JavaScript. So we have already linked our JavaScript file over here. So we need to target all these menu text divisions. So these are basically anchor tags. So let's target all these menu text anchor tags. So let's go to the main.js file and let's type const and I'll just call it all menu text equals document.querySelector all because there are multiple elements. And here let's type menu text. Now this will store all the menu text anchor tags inside this constant. Now let's loop through all the menu text. So let's type all menu text dot for each and I'll just call each of them M. You can name this anything you want. And first of all, let's target all the characters inside text container. So I'll just type const and I'll just call it all chars equals and we need to select all the characters inside this particular menu text. So we are calling it M over here. So let's type M dot query selector all and let's type text container and in that we have spans for each of the characters. Right now, let's go ahead and loop through all these characters. So let's tap all chars dot for each and I'll just call each of the characters C and let's add different transition delays to each of the characters. So let's tap C dot style dot transition delay equals. Now for adding the transition delay, we will also take into account the index. So I'll just add an I over here. So you can call this anything you want, but the second argument over here is the index. So what we're going to do is we're going to type I times, let's try 30, and then we will add milliseconds. So what we are doing over here is that we are adding 30 milliseconds times the I, which is the index, as the transition delay. So in the beginning, the I will be set to 0 because arrays start from 0. So it will be 0 times 30, which is 0 milliseconds. So for the first character, it will have a transition delay of 0. And then for the second time, it will have a value of 1. So then it will be 1 times 30, which is 30 milliseconds. So the transition delay of the second element will be 30 milliseconds. And in the same way, we'll have a value of 2 for the third one. And it will be 2 times 30, which is 60 milliseconds. And so on. So let's do the same for all the characters inside this text container copy. So I'll just copy these lines of code and let's paste it down here. And here instead of all chars, I'll just type all chars copy. And here instead of text container, let's type text container copy because we have this division with the class of text container copy. And here instead of all chars, let's type all chars copy. Right now this should work. So let's go ahead and test it out. So let's hover over this and we can see that we have the animation added for each of the individual characters. So everything is working all right. Now you can go ahead and change these transition delays to your needs. You can also change this transition duration to whatever you need. So that's basically how you can create this menu animation using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. Alright, so that's basically it for this video. If you have any doubts, you can ask in the comments below. And if you like this video, please click on the like button and subscribe to this channel to get the latest video updates. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a nice day.